Hello, and welcome to Don't Just Sit There, Do Something for climate news, science, and easy ways that you can make a difference right now. With an election coming up, it's a great time to talk about the politics of climate and encourage everyone to care about climate change, no matter what your political affiliation is. The record-setting heat, wildfires, drought, and melting ice this summer are just a warm-up act if we don't get serious about reducing our climate pollution from using fossil fuels, oil, coal, and natural gas for transportation and power. I was just hoping to pretend that everything that happened this summer was a bunch of isolated incidents that had nothing to do with global climate change. Because climate pollution stays in the air for a while, our actions in the next few years are so important. Whether you consider yourself a tree hugger or not, climate change matters, and recognizing the need to do something about climate change shouldn't be a partisan issue. According to the Pew Research Center, 97% of climate scientists agree that man-made climate change is real. The climate scientists agree we've got a problem. They've done their job. It's time for us to insist our politicians do their jobs and start agreeing on some solutions. Governor Romney stated in September, however, that while he accepts climate change is real and humans are a factor, we shouldn't put limits on climate pollution. So it's a huge problem, but we shouldn't do anything about it? What is that? That's not a reasonable position. That's like if the fireman knocked on your door and said your house is on fire, and you said, no, don't put it out because it'll probably just burn out on its own eventually anyway, and I don't want you getting my furniture all wet. And maybe we should just let house fires happen without interfering and the world will be a better place. An oil-funded group, Americans for Prosperity, brags that groups like theirs have made great headway in making accepting climate science into a political liability for Republican candidates. The oil and gas industry has given candidates $200 million in direct campaign funding since 1990. $200 million? 3/4 of that money has been spent on Republicans. The fossil fuel companies are looking out for their best interests. They've got a product to sell. We need leaders who will look out for our best interests long term. Here's what I don't get. Shouldn't conservatives want to conserve? Despite the pressure, some conservative lawmakers support climate action. Republican lawmakers have worked with Democrats to create climate bills. Republican climate scientists have tried to get their party leaders to listen. Evangelical Christian leaders, often conservative politically, have called on the faithful to act on climate change and become better stewards of creation. Hunters and sport fishermen nationwide are in support of action on climate change. And under the mantra, conservation is conservative, the group formerly known as Republicans for Environmental Protection is sending an open letter to the Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney, urging a commitment to clean energy. As a voter, it's better to think of climate change not as a separate issue, but as a lens with which to view every other issue. There is no way to talk responsibly about the future of our national security, energy independence, agriculture, job growth, or the economy without considering the huge changes happening to our climate. The Democratic Party platform now says that global climate change is one of the biggest threats of this generation. The Republican Party platform, on the other hand, has dropped even the admission that we need to address climate change at all. How are you just going to refuse to do anything at all? Were you around this summer? If you think the fossil fuel companies are going to change what they're doing without any incentive, you're a few keystones short of a pipeline. President Obama, by contrast, has repeatedly expressed a commitment to expanding our use of clean energy, even when faced with the most anti-environment Congress ever. Studies have calculated that acting on climate could create hundreds of thousands of jobs. The U.S. could be a world leader on this instead of standing still while countries like China continue to invest more than us in green tech and get the jobs and economic growth that come with it. If you want to make sure that the next few years put us on the path to preserve our climate and come out on top of the clean energy revolution, don't just sit there. Do something. Okay, here are your two actions. An easy action that will make a difference in your own life and a larger action that will push for bigger change. First, save energy and money by keeping your refrigerator and freezer full with containers of water if you have to, and keeping the doors closed as much as possible. Do I have to say this? It's that easy to keep from losing your cool. Secondly, whether you're black, white, straight, gay, a Democrat, a Republican, or none of the above, someone died to give you the right to vote in our democracy. Be a voter this November 6th. Make sure you're registered, have ID if you need it, and know your polling place. The link below can help. You know, or don't. But when our planet burns down, I'm blaming you. Keep your fridge and freezer full and closed, and be a voter on November 6th. In other words, don't just sit there. Don't just sit there. Don't just sit there. Do something. And that wraps up this episode. Tune in next time to hear the latest and learn something about climate. Up next in our tour of the fossil fuels is the latest craze in natural gas drilling, an increasingly popular technique called hydrofracturing, or fracking. So join us. As always, you can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, iTunes, or on the web at DoSomethingAboutClimate.com. So watch again and tell your friends. I just think our elected officials should, care about protecting us and making sure there's a future for our kids. Right? I mean, right?